Let's start with the school first.
The commissioners will come back out of recess. This is our budget workshop, and we've had a request from Dr. Phipps if he could move up and be first since he's got a meeting at 6. So we're going to honor that. Brian, do you have any remarks?
Just a couple. Again, just to hit the just housekeeping piece. On the schedule we sent out, we said we were going to start with general government departments, work through the budget, general government, human services, community services, and then education. And like I said, Dr. Fisk asked because of his prior commitment, we could do that. We're prepared to do that. That's not a problem. So we'll start on page 121 in your budget book. But then we'll go back and pick up at the top and come bring our way back down, if that's acceptable to the board. Second piece of that is we, unless we haven't really heard any additional questions from the board since we presented you the budget, so we're prepared to answer whatever questions that come up, but we haven't been given any, so if they're, I'm just saying, you might need to give us a minute on a couple of them. If you got something really detailed, we might need to pull some stuff for you, because we haven't had any.
You've had one question.
We've had yours, yes, sir, I apologize. We did have one from you, and we were able to address that one.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we begin, I think there's a serious policy issue that needs to come before this board. I don't see how we can possibly review a budget line by line when we have a major change in direction in the financing of county government with the proposal that we have a $3 million bond issue to finance a part of this budget. I think
It's not a bond issue. Installment financing with a bank.
okay, you're going to borrow $3 million.
Well, that's our proposal to the board.
Okay,
And it would be an installment financing that's allowed under 16820 finance, in which you would pledge the collateral of the facility to that. So it's not a bond issue.
well, I understand that, but the problem here is we've got a major change in financial policy because we have been pay as we go for as long as I've been a commissioner, and for as long as anybody can remember before I was a commissioner, the county was pay as you go. So you've got $3 million in expense that's outside of this budget that's going to be financed, and it's going to take 10 years to pay it off. And my question to members of this board, because if you're going to do pay as you go, you're going to have to look at this budget review differently than you look at it if you're going to borrow $3 million in order to make this budget work. So my question to the commissioners, to the Board of Commissioners is, who on this board supports the borrowing of $3 million in order to proceed with this budget?
Okay, I'll start that. I was probably the one that instigated the possibility of borrowing funds as it related to the First Bank renovation and challenged our manager and the chief financial officer to look at other projects that we could speed up in the process in the same sort of financing. You know, this is not a done deal. This is our workshop, and as we go through it, I think we'll see some of the questions and some of the things that you're talking about. You know, it's an alternative. It's the same thing that you know, for example, we had discussions when we did the $1.8 million radio system, whether we would finance that or pull it down out of the general fund. And we had conversations about, you know, paying half and out of the fund and then borrowing half of it, and we chose to pay that down. We did the same thing when we purchased the building and purchased other real estate. You know, I think that our fund balance is down to the level where if we want to do certain things, we need to protect our fund balance at the level that it's at. So, I mean, I'm the one that probably got that started as part of the budget process.
But, Mr. Chairman, you just raised another issue that is a problem, and that is the $1.8 million for the radio system was not an on-the-budget item. The $1.8 million was pulled out of the fund balance, and it was set up as a capital expense. it doesn't show up to the taxpayer as an increase in spending. And that's part of the problem with this budget. We are becoming an awful lot like the federal government in the last 3 or 4 years. We're taking so much stuff off of the budget and putting it into other things and into capital projects, taking it directly from fund balance. It never passed through the general fund for spending. So we have a distorted budget to start with. And now we're proposing that, now the proposal is that we borrow $3 million in order to make already a very heavy budget go forward. We should have a discussion before we get in. If we're going to have to get into this and try to cut something in this budget and not borrow money, we need to know that now. We don't need to know that, and when we finish this, and everybody sits here and stares at the wall and rubber stamps this stuff. So I don't hear any other commissioners objecting to borrowing $3 million to make this budget work.
That's because I've not recognized anybody else other than you at this time. So any other commissioners want to comment on the option of using financing to meet the county's needs, financial needs?
I'll comment.
Okay.
For a number of years, we've allowed major projects to be postponed and postponed and postponed. And now we face the issue of we've hit a brick wall, and we face the issue of having to do some of these things. Now, we have various options, and I agree, we're going to be going through the budget. We're not making final decisions tonight on how we're going to spend the money or where the money's going to come from, what projects we're going to do. And that will be handled through our discussions for the next 3 or 4 nights. When you look at some of these projects, if we are to borrow the $3 million to pay off some of the projects, they're needed. If we still decide, this board decides that we need these projects and we don't borrow the $3 million, then we're talking about a 6 cents increase, and I'm not prepared to raise taxes at this point in time. But we'll be discussing these issues in detail, this board, so I have no issue for us to discuss this $3 million loan as part of the budget process. We may or may not go with it.
Well, my question to the board going into reviewing a fat budget, and this is a fat budget, if you're not going to finance, then when we review this, we need to decide what we're going to cut and how much we need to cut as we go through this budget.
Brian, I saw you raised your hand.
Just wanted to, Commissioner Richardson is correct in that the radio project was a capital project. It did come in, it was done by the board. It wasn't in the budget initially. It came in from fund balance. But we have shown that as a transfer in this budget document. So if you look on page 24, under the revised budget, you'll see that the transfer to other funds is $2.5 million. So we do show that in the budget, so you can do apples to apples when you're looking at the budget.
Well,
So-
and I appreciate that, and I understand that, and that's the bookkeeping of the thing. What I'm talking about is the policy issue of whether Beaufort County crosses the line and all of a sudden starts borrowing money to run government, because the community college or two things and the school system are two things that are in here, and this is funds that we normally give them, and now we're going to finance the funds that they're going to get and spend within a year over a 10-year period of time. Now, when you start borrowing like this, it doesn't seem like it ends. If you look at what's happened to what was a $25 or $26 million fund balance 3 years ago, is now like a $15 or $16 million fund balance. See, in addition to all of the money that's in the budget, we have been through another $10 million in spending in 3 years. So if you're going to control spending and keep taxes down, you have to make the decision before you start with this budget. Sitting here and reviewing this budget without having in the back of your mind how you're going to handle that $3 million loan for something that you're going to, it's like buying ice cream cone. We're going out and borrow $3 million to buy ice cream cone. That ice cream cone is going to melt real quick and be gone. But we're going to take 10 years to pay it off. This is not good management. And that's my point here. If the board decides that you're going to do the $3 million in financing, I think you should decide it before you go into this budget. Otherwise, no one knows what they might want to cut. If you know that you're going to whack off about half of that $3 million, which I disagree with, that we have $3 million worth of needs, if you're going to whack off $1.5 million of that, say, and do that in the coming year, be added to this budget, then we need to find $1.5 million in expenses to take out of this, or we need to raise taxes. I don't advocate raising taxes, and I don't advocate borrowing money to run the government on. So, once again, silence means consent. I take the silence of this board on this issue as you support borrowing $3 million for continuing to make this budget work.
I think the options are on the table, and that's what the purpose is of the budget workshop. We're not here to vote tonight on the budget or whether we're going to borrow the money. That is one available source. I know, Brian, you were looking like you've got something to say.
Well, I'd like to say to the board, just for clarification, I think we've addressed it in our manager's message, and we've been pretty straightforward about that and how we built the budget. None of the borrowing is for continuing expenses. It is, now, you may debate whether one of the projects that we put in there is financeable over 10 years, but what we did was we looked at projects to say, do these projects have a life in excess of 10 years? And if they do, then we felt they were eligible to be able to be financed for 10 years. So, I mean, you can debate those. That's certainly for the board to debate. Just an example, like with the school system. When y'all met with the school board, they said, we're proposing to buy 2 activity buses at a total of $178,000. One school bus, that school bus will last us 18 years. That other school bus, they will last us 18 years apiece. So we said, well, if they'll last 18 years, we can finance them for 10. So that's what we did. We went back and looked at projects, whether it was the First Bank renovation or whether it was work at the courthouse, whatever it was that would at least last 10 years in our opinion. But again, that's for you to debate and determine. But this is not for continuing funds. We are not spending ongoing money out of this bond, out of this borrowing package.
Well, yeah, and that's my point. Up until now, our policy has been that we were pay as you go, which meant that there were things that got put off and delayed and not done. And I don't know of anything in the county right now that is a horrible need for it. There's a lot of wants and desires, but there's not horrible needs out there. That's just a figment of somebody's imagination. So the question is that's in front of this board is, are we going to continue to be pay as you go, or are we going to go to debt financing to run our government for continuing operations? Because if you do, the taxpayers are going to, in addition to paying your taxes, you're going to be paying on this bond, this lending, let's call it, for the next 10 years for what we have been calling continuing operations in the past. It is a major shift in county policy. We have a fund balance. In the last 3 years, it's gone from 25 million down to about 15 million. That's an extra $3.5 million a year that's come off, that's in spending that doesn't show up on the books. The books are cooked. They're not fair. Manager can tell you, he's telling you this all he wants to, but if you look at what spending was 5 years ago in this county, and you look at what spending is now, and you look at how the fund balance has gone down, the only thing you can ask yourself is, where did the money go?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, again, I want to tell you that our staff works with integrity, and there's been no cooking of the books, as Commissioner Richardson said. We take very seriously our job and how we deal with the books and how they're presented. They are presented fairly, and we're here to answer any questions about those, so I don't appreciate the comment. If you will look on page 23, you will see the unassigned fund balance. And to that extent, in 14, it was $19 million. It is down to 14, so there has been some expenditure of that. When you say 25 million, there is a difference in unassigned fund balance and fund balance. There's a certain amount of fund balance that is restricted and you cannot spend. That's where you had that's the larger piece of it. You will see clearly on page 23, and there has been expenditure. You have dropped from 37% in 14, 19 million, down to 14. That's your spendable amount, but it's not 25 to 14. These are the numbers.
Thank you very much. We're gonna.
These numbers come from the audited financial reports. all of those, all the way until you get to the projected 2017 and 2018 fund balance number.
That's factual information. We're gonna move right into, because I want to make sure we give proper time to our superintendent. So, Don, if you will, and whoever else with your team.
Do you mind if I tee it up real quick?
Yes.
Okay, what we did this year in the school's budget was, you have two expense line items as you normally do. We've added a third one. You've got the current expense budget. You'll see the actuals as they run across, so just kind of run you back through. On the main page, it rolls up and gives you those numbers on the actual, what the original was, what the amended was, and what we recommended. On the current expense, we took the current year's expense, bumped it by 2%. And that's what we recommended in the budget. That was for continuing operations, the current expense piece that you give them. Then there was a capital outlay piece. We looked at what did they receive last year in capital outlay. And that was the $937,100. Then we went back in and looked at projects that they gave you on their capital sheet. And the superintendent's actually looking at some of those to make sure we're still good with what we talked about and looking at next year's as well. But what we did was we looked at that and said, what of those will exceed 10 years and what do we feel are applicable to be financed, those bigger projects? And that's where we came up with the $659,700 in cash capital financing. And then there's $330,995 in straight cash capital that you would give to them to do smaller projects. So that's how your budget lines up last year to this year. Now, there was some differences last year in that you gave the school system some budget flexibility to take money from capital and move it to current expense. We didn't do that. We took where we were last year and bumped it based on that. So you'll see some differences in those numbers, but just wanted to tee that up for you. Thank you.
Just here to answer any questions. We did our presentation. We provided the documents to you. The only thing I would stress is on the proposed local budget request that we had, there were 3 line items that included some information that came out of the governor's budget and also the class size reduction. We've gotten a little bit more information, at least on the class size reduction piece of where we stand with that, but we've seen the Senate budget. We haven't seen the House budget yet, and the Senate budget is a little more favorable in terms of being able to reduce that money. We don't know if the House budget will restore some of those cuts. I don't know what will happen there yet, so we still don't have the full picture in terms of the bottom part of that estimated expenditure that I shared with you that was tied to the budgets that would come out. We also don't have the federal budget yet, and I apologize we don't have that. It's difficult to build a budget when you don't know what you're going to have in terms of revenue, but we expect that the federal budget number that we may get will be a little bit smaller, but we hope it's not a significant cut, and that will have a great deal to do with how we handle the class size reduction and the ability to mitigate those losses as much as possible.
So you're saying right now, there's no changes in what we have in our book?
There's not any change. There could be on those bottom 3 items once we have a firm number from both the state and from the federal government, but we don't have that now.
These are the same numbers that we had
Yes, sir.
during our joint meeting.
That's right.
Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you,
Mr. Buzzio.
Perhaps, let's talk a little bit about technology. When I look at what we're proposing here, I don't see any money for technology.
We have, well, it was listed in the capital
Yeah.
request that we have, but in the proposal.
Your request, your
That's
original
right.
request. I assume that's important.
It is. It's the ongoing work that we do. There's a replenishment cycle that we have for devices that are in our system. And Mark Malik, our director, I was not able to get up with today. I wanted to bring in an item-by-item list for you of what that $400,000 system-wide request that we've had, that's kind of a standing request in our capital, what that actually is. And I'm not able to answer that question, but we'll give you that information as soon as I can get it.
But I assume you consider, and your teachers consider, that technology is an important tool for educating our
Yes, sir.
children in this county?
Yes, sir.
Is this a recurring expense, or is it a one-time expense?
It's recurring. And some of the items are, again, replenishing devices that we have. It could be the internet wireless access that we use to conduct business. A lot of the things that we have to do now are testing related with the Department of Public Instruction. Again, I will give you an item-by-item list. I don't have that in front of me
That's
today.
fine. So what you're saying also is the state has mandated certain programs that only can be done through technology?
There are, and a good deal of the transmission of data that we have is done electronically.
Okay. I don't want you to address safety and security in any detail at all, for obvious reasons. But I see that we haven't allocated any funds for that either.
We'd have to do that out of what was remaining after those projects were completed. I think a little over $300,000 is what will be there for the rest of the capital projects that we have.
Okay. I know we have a unfunded mandate, looks like, coming down from the state in 2018, has to do with class size. Has any money been put aside for that possibility?
No, and we don't know what the overall impact will be with that. What we've been told by the General Assembly is they'll start to allocate positions like art, music, PE, and world languages, which we currently don't have as a line item allocation. We've been told we would get funds for that, but we don't know what that year is going to look like at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Tubbs.
Mr. Richards?
Are there, within this budget, anywhere within the expenditures for the coming year, are there any additions to buildings, increasing the size of buildings, or building new buildings?
No, sir.
All right. How about the remodeling of existing buildings, or the replacement, or the putting back into service of existing buildings?
No, sir.
Are you finished?
Yes.
I went first. Dr. Phipps, one thing I forgot to ask you, is the per pupil funding issued by the state decreasing or increasing for public school children?
The overall dollar amount goes up. If you take a look at what that looks like from year to year, the number of students in North Carolina is increasing, and the larger proportion of the funds that we get that go back to charter schools are increasing. So the net result of what we see, I think, tends to go down. We're a declining enrollment school system. Our numbers have gone down slightly over the last few years. We had 2 years of actual growth, but there are other places in the state that are seeing large enrollment numbers. We're not seeing that in Beaufort County.
So basically what you're saying is the per pupil amount for each child is decreasing?
It would decrease with
Thank
the
you.
number of students that we have. But that varies county by county.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No questions.
One of the things I would like for you to touch on, since we have additional people in here tonight, is when you said we have a decline in enrollment, speak a little bit as it relates to the 3 areas where some of our high school students are going now that were not available, 15 years ago.
Well, I think 15 years ago, the public schools were the only game in town for the most part. And what we see now is the proliferation of charter schools. We see the early college high school, which is one of our schools, but several of our high school students elect apply and go to the early college high school, so they're not in the 3 traditional high schools. We also have the Northeast Regional School of Biotechnology and Agriculture, which is in Jamesville now, and we have a good number of students. I think 26 of the freshman class in that program came from Beaufort County, and along with those students, when they go there, the money flows to those schools. So those are funds and individuals that were in our school system that aren't here anymore. And we want to work on, I'm not against the idea of competition and having other opportunities for parents. I want to find out what it is that we can do better to make sure that we're holding on to our students. And there's some things that we might not be able to do. If it's on a religious viewpoint, some things that we're just not able to do because of the way things are set up. But if it's a quality of education, if it's quality of opportunities, if it's anything like that that we feel like is in our purview and control, we certainly want to do a better job so that folks would choose. We want to be a school system of choice where people have options to go and they choose to stay with us. But I think one of the sheets that we gave you showed the increased number of dollars that are going out each year to charter schools, and that's directly related to the number of students that we have that are enrolling in charter schools. And then you have the voucher system in North Carolina for students in private schools, and we have a number of students that are going there as well. And then we have folks that opt to homeschool their students. So there are a lot more education options available now than there were, say, 15 years ago. And I think folks are taking advantage of those.
The 61 students that go to the technology school in Janesville, did we transfer money that comes from Raleigh
The state,
over to them?
the state money goes directly with the student. The local money is a pass-through that comes from us that we have to pay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're still going to be able to make your next meeting.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Brian?
Sir, I guess we'll go back to page 29, which is general government. We can start there. see, Mark here. So again, just to kind of tee back up how we talked about the budget, on each department's page, you will see the department, a brief description of the department. You will see a roll-up on the front page that shows it broken down by personnel, benefits, operating, capital outlay, and then totals up. If you turn to the next page behind that department, you will see the line item detail for each line item associated with that department. And you will see 2014 actuals, 2015 actuals, 2016 actuals. You will see the original 17 budget. You will see the revised 17 budget, which means any changes you've made throughout the year. Then you will see a 17 estimate, which is where we anticipate the budget finishing up at the end of the year. Then you will see the 18 requested. That is the request that came from the departments. And then you will see an 18 recommended. That is the recommended budget that comes after we have the negotiations with the department heads. As we go through, the CFO and I sit down with each department head and go through those line item by line item and discuss them in detail. And make cuts or make add backs. Sometimes we look at them and our department head has said, well, we think this is where this needs to be, and we'll look back at history and we'll say, well, what about here? And we'll find sometimes that there's been an error or we just had not anticipated something. So we may you may see on the recommended, we've added some in there. You more than likely will see that it's either the same or a little less. But again, as we talked about in the opening piece, this is the governing body's budget. It is up a little bit. The majority of that is related to the membership pieces that we wanted to try to get back under the county as a whole, instead of having them sitting out in outside agencies where you were funding in the outside agency category, like memberships to the Chamber of Commerce. That's really not an outside agency. It's a membership that you pay to be a part of that organization, just like you pay a membership to be a part of the Association of County Commissioners, the National Association of Counties, those kind of things, the COG, the School of Government, those things. So we pulled those under. That's where you'll see some of those. You'll see that bump up. But essentially, you are from the original budget, 372, you're up to 391. And we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about your budget and what we estimated out for you on any of those.
But the biggest part of that change is under dues and subscriptions, which is the movement of the state association and the national and the Chamber of Commerce.
I will tell you exactly what's under that. Give me just 1 second. Under that dues and subscriptions, there's the School of Government dues, there's the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, there's the Council of Governments, there's the RPO, the Rural Planning Organization that you're a member of, there's NACO. We also include in that American Legal, which is the folks that publish the code and keep it updated on the web, so that's a subscription. There's Southern Albemarle Association, there's the Washington Beaufort Chamber of Commerce, the Belhaven Chamber of Commerce, the Aurora Chamber of Commerce, and the North Carolina Association of Black County Commissioners organization. Those are the dues and subscriptions that are under there. So it went from, and again, a couple of those we didn't have in there last year. We had them in other places. All the chambers we actually had out underneath outside organizations. We just felt like it made more sense to be up underneath the commissioners where we have all the other dues. It's the same money. It's just in a different place in the budget. And our goal as we go through the budget, and as we've stressed all of our departments, is to put the right expenditure in the right place. And that's what we're doing. It's taken us a couple of years to do that, to get things where we want them to be. But then it's consistent, and we're able to watch those as we go through.
Thank you. Any questions from any commissioners?
What are the proposals for the chambers for the coming year?
The Washington Beaufort Chamber of Commerce is $1,500. The Bellhaven Chamber of Commerce is 1,000, the Aurora Chamber of Commerce is 1,000. And then there's some additional requested money from the chambers. If it's an additional request on top of that, it does go into outside agency, because this is simply a membership that we're showing under dues and memberships. So there is, I think has Bellhaven asked for some more money? $9,000, they've asked for some more money. That's the only one? Okay, so they will show up underneath outside agencies, because that's an additional request.
That's in the expansion.
It is in the expansion. It's outside of just membership.
What did they send us for justification for why they want this money?
We're going to get into that when we get to the outside. This is strictly the county's membership into the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, that's correct. The other piece is something that's in the expansion.
Can you provide me with their justification?
We
You can
provide
do
you
that.
with-
It's in the
It's actually
book.
in your book.
It's actually in the book.
It's in this back section where we have service expansions,
Okay,
and we'll go through those individually.
All right.
And they'll actually be here to present.
all right. I've read up to here.
If there's no other questions,
I
we'll...
have one question.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, Mr. Chairman. Dues and subscriptions, now, what was it this current fiscal year?
Sir?
This current fiscal year, dues
Dues and subscriptions this current fiscal year were 31,000.
and it's going up to 42,000?
Yes, sir.
And that is due to more organizations, or because you moved, what you said, or you moved organizations under here that were in other areas?
That's correct. It's not new organizations. I don't see that there are any new organizations on there. It's just we pulled some of the organizations that were sitting in another part of the budget and pulled them up underneath the Board of Commissioners, because it is a membership for the county. And the board represents.
So there's
the county.
no actual increase then?
Overall budget, no, sir.
No, that's what I'm asking.
Right. We moved money in.
Okay.
I don't see that you don't see any new ones, are there? Are there any new ones?
There are no new ones. I mean, there may have been a couple that went up, like, I believe the dues
Oh,
for
the
the,
RPO went up a little
for
bit.
the COG
Yeah.
went up just a couple $100.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you want to move into county administration?
Yes, sir. That's on page 31. The other thing that you'll see, it's a little different on the board, because we just list the board members, but also on department pages, you'll see, again, the information about the department. You'll see an org chart that lists out how that lays out. You'll see contact information. Then you'll also see the full-time authorized position. So you'll go back to FY 13-14 and see the number of positions that were in that department. And then if they've changed, you'll also see whether we recommend any changes in there. Again, the roll-up, and then on the next page, the overall. This budget is actually down just a slight bit. The original budget in 17 was 454,978. This requested budget is 454,823. So it is flat.
Questions, comments?
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Drug testing, am I reading this right, professional service drug test? Is that for pre-employment screening, or was that a special one? Because I don't see anything allocated for 2018.
Yeah, that was actually the last time there was stuff there, and I believe the way that worked was it used to be maybe rolled up underneath the manager's office, and then it was spread out amongst the departments. We pulled it back up underneath HR, so that when they come in, it's done. But we drug test everybody who comes in.
Pre-screening.
Yes, sir, it's a post offer. So we offer the position, then we do the background and the drug testing because of legal issues. We don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Richards?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. The next one is finance.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 33 of your budget book. The major change within my department is actually in the org chart, and you'll see where we've added the customer service division of the water department, which was voted on by the board, I believe it was last December. We now have that listed underneath finance. The actual dollars, the cost for customer service remains within the water department itself. So we could have done that a couple of ways. We could have put that in the finance department and done an admin charge to the water fund to charge them for that and bring the money back to pay the general fund back. But we thought it was just simpler and more straightforward to leave those costs directly allocated to the water department. As far as my overall budget, it is up 0.2% or $1,101 from this year's current original budget. And most of that cost is associated with the cost of insurance increasing. I was able to absorb most of it, but couldn't cover the last $1,100.
And I'm assuming as we flip through the pages, we're going to see that in each one of the departments
Yes.
as it relates to the benefits.
Yes, sir.
And that was based on a
6.9.
6.96% increase from the state health plan, and then local government retirement was quarter percent increase on local government retirement. And of course, that's the piece you put in, and then it's also matched by the employee.
Are the employees paying any of the increase on the benefit side?
They are now paying, or they will, the state health plan runs on a calendar year. So starting, well, the proposal, because the budget at the state has not been finalized yet, and they're waiting on that. There's some language in the Senate budget about some different things, and who knows what the House is going to come out with. But the proposal from the state treasurer's office, which manages the health plan, is that there will be a level premium increase for the next 4 years, 5 years. Next 4 years, there'll be a level premium increase, 6.96% every year for the next 4 years. That's their proposal for the 70-30 plan, which is essentially what we call the employee-only plan. It's not necessarily employee only, you can get other stuff, but it's the 70-30 plan. There are two plans, 70-30, 80-20. So that's on the 70-30 plan. Also, they are proposing an increase of, or adding an additional, or adding $25 payment by employees for the 70-30 employee-only plan. Right now, if you are on the 70-30 plan, if you are an employee and you only have employee-only coverage, right now, there is no cost to you for that. The county funds all of that. If you do the 80-20 plan, you essentially buy up a higher level of benefit and you pay some for that. But if you are an employee only, and again, employees pay for their spouses, they pay for their family, the county doesn't pay for any of that. But if you are an employee only and you're on the 70-30 plan right now, you don't pay anything. The county covers all of that. The new plan that's being proposed by the state of North Carolina, the state treasurer's office, and again, it's yet to be seen how that all shakes out. The budgets have got to be finalized at the state level before we know. They are proposing a $25 payment by employees to the state to be on the employee-only 70-30 plan.
But it's not a done deal, but if they pass it, it means $300 a year for the employee.
It is not a done deal, but I would heavily anticipate that it will be that or it will be more, because my understanding from where the state is right now, they are, I won't put words in their mouth, but I think they believe the benefit is too rich. I believe they think that the retirement system is too rich a benefit, and they're looking to shift a higher cost from the health plan, and they're also looking to, my anticipation is to do away with the pension program and put in a 401k or something like that. So for new employees, for new state employees, that would be my anticipation. Again, that's just me reading tea leaves, but I think that's where it's headed.
Any other commissioner with a question? All right, human resources.
So on the human resources side, this is, it's a 4% increase. Again, some of this is related to the insurance piece. And then there's also additional funding put in here for the drug testing, and our randoms. We do randoms on some of our water folks, our safety sensitive positions that they're CDLs. So
Do random on who?
we random our CDLs. We're required to do that under federal. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Dolores is here to answer any of those questions you may have. But like I say, the largest piece, the largest bump there is from in professional services medical, which is our drug testing, and that bumps from 3,000 to 5,400. And again, that's pulling it all back under HR, so that they're administering it. So we don't have it spread out amongst all the departments. It's just easier for us to track it, easier for us to take care of it.
Questions?
I was just wondering why you didn't random test everybody. I mean, to me, you're just picking on a certain few people.
Well, and I would agree with you on that. The problem is, the law says that we
Well,
can only random safety-sensitive positions.
And you mean the guy that take the water is the only safety-sensitive position?
Well, that is something that we're actually looking at. Jennifer's actually putting that program together. The question becomes, what are, and you can debate that all day long, what's considered a safety-sensitive position. And if you're driving a truck down the road going 55 miles an hour, maybe that's you ought to be safe, you ought to make sure. But
No.
that's not always the case.
No offense, but if I carry a 9mm, I think that's safety-sensitive too.
Yeah. So there is some pretty strict case law on that, and under state, because you're a governmental employee, there's some things there that says it can only be safety sensitive position. But Jennifer's working on that, and our goal is to expand that into to determine what we consider to be the safety sensitive positions, because there's a lot more than what you would think. And to be able to do randoms on
Well, I just hate for you to pick on a certain few little people.
Well,
That's all.
and that's simply because the federal government requires that.
Well, I know what the federal government requires, but it don't make it right.
We have to abide by it because it is the federal law.
Excuses,
Any-
excuses.
Anyone else? Moving right along, tax assessor.
So the tax assessors piece, this is down 7%. You'll see the org chart, same number of folks. You'll see the decrease on the roll-up. I believe the majority of this is related to some computer software and support program that we're not renewing and don't have to renew this year. So you'll see a bump, you'll see a decrease from the original budget of $132,500 to $85,000. So that's the majority of that. Again, there's some that goes up a little bit, the insurance and those kind of pieces, so they level out. They take away from some of that, but overall, it's about 7% down from where it was in the 17 original budget. And Bobby's here if you have questions that I can't answer for Bob.
I see we have Bobby in the room. Any questions of Brian or Bobby as it relates to the budget? We'll keep the questions to the budget. How about that? All right. Tax collector.
The tax collector's budget is on page 39. And again, everything is the same there, position-wise. Again, we're not requesting, there are no changes in positions across the entire budget. This budget is up about 5.1%, and that is all mainly related to the legal services that are provided by the collection agents, the attorney that you engage, Zacchaeus Financial, that you engage to do foreclosure work for you. When he does that work, we have to pay him, so we have to show it on the expenditure side. There's also an offsetting revenue that comes in for that, but that's where the majority of that increase is on this budget.
Good go.
Any questions of Wynn or the county manager as it relates to his budget? Okay. Court facilities.
Okay, so this is the court facility piece that we use in taking care of the courthouse, it is down, we show it down 9%, and that's because some of the projects that we originally had put, or were originally looked at last year in here, we reduced those because we proposed those in the financing package. So from the original budget, you'll see, and of course, this includes like funding for the jury commission. This also continues to show, this is a $12,500 expenditure that we put in there last year. And that's essentially, it's called under this courthouse operations. That is a budget line item for the clerk of court to use to replace small items or items that they feel like need to be replaced in the courthouse, whether that's a chair here or there or whatever that is. So that is maintained. And then the utilities, and then just some general repair. Of course, again, in our proposed capital piece, we reduced that expenditure over there that we put in for capital because we rolled it up into this one, so there's only $10,000 in there for that. And then also included in this one is the office rent that the county pays for the public defender's office. And then contract services, the 145 is the continuation contract for the courthouse security.
I've got a question, but I'm going to yield to any of these first if they have one on the budget.
I do.
Okay.
Brian,
Yes, sir.
on the maintenance repair of the courthouse where it went from 50 to 10, is that some of the projects we moved under the other area for repairs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on the contract services for $145,000, that the cleaning service?
No, sir. That's the security service.
The what?
The security service.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
My question is kind of a technical one. I realize the $500,000 that we've got in there that would be part of the $3 million loan is in another area. In keeping with the other departments, would it not be fair to present it right here as $500,000 as a financing piece?
We actually show the, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, actually, what will end up happening if we do that financing, right now it's sitting in the school budgets, the community college, the public schools, and the rest is in the maintenance
In the
budget.
maintenance, okay.
If we end up doing that financing, it will be pulled out of there into a capital project fund. So we actually won't show it in each department. We'll put in a multi-year capital project fund.
I started to send you a question, but as I went to the next, kept going through, I saw it.
That's a pretty easy one. Just keep them easy.
Any,
And that's something that when you have a project that crosses multiple, or crosses fiscal years, crosses 2 fiscal years, we always pull those projects out and put them in a capital ordinance so that they're very easily tracked and they're able to be watched.
So the way that ends up showing up in the general fund, when it's all said and done, it shows as a transfer. So we'll move the money out of the maintenance department and put it to transfer, and you'll see it leaving the general fund and going to the capital project fund. So it's still accounted for as an expenditure in the general fund.
So you can watch the money as it flows.
got you. All right, no other question. We'll move to the Board of Elections.
So Kelly is here. I'll kind of tee it up for you. And this is one that, who knows what this budget's going to look like. It's up 24%, but the majority of that is for municipal elections. You know that we provide the municipal elections. But there's also a revenue offset for that. The municipalities reimburse us those costs of those elections. So it bumps up during the municipal year because that happens. As to how many members of the Board of Elections you're going to have, who knows? There's too many lawsuits in play to try to figure that all out. So, anything you want to address that? I mean, I think Kelly's built her budget.
Just our normal election cycle, it's easy to believe that we're coming out of the biggest one, as far as funds are concerned, because of the presidential. It's easy to think our presidential is our biggest election, but this year, on the finance end, is kind of our low end because we don't have any elections this spring. but going into our next year, going into next year, we've got our municipal elections that'll start this fall. We have 7 municipalities, and they will reimburse those costs to us. And then we also have the primary next spring, and then a possibility of a second primary next year, in the end of that finance, or fiscal year, excuse me.
Well, while you're at the podium,
Okay.
and you may not be around when we get to talking about the paving, since you brought that up, you want to discuss how bad the parking lot is?
And I have talked with Christina about this. Right now, I talked to her coming in here. We have 2 potholes about, I don't know, they're about 2 foot wide and probably a foot deep right this minute, that we're trying to figure out what to do until we have some kind of work done to the parking lot. It holds water. It's always held water. I don't know if it was the way it was laid out when they initially built it. So anytime there's water, rain, it ponds, and that pond that sits in that main drag is probably 100 yards. It's about a football field and about 10 yards wide. Wouldn't you agree, Christina? And that, yeah. So I don't know, I'm not a expert on how to fix it, but it just holds water in that parking lot, so something's gonna have to be done with drainage to help that out, and that, it needs to be fixed.
Needs to be fixed yesterday.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've done the best we could with what we've had, and we've patched it and put in concrete patches, and we've done some hot patches with asphalt over the, but it's just, we've patched it and patched it and patched it until the patches are starting to fail now.
Any other questions while Kelly's? Okay.
Yes, sir.
If the machines, the voting machines, is there a discussion about it?
There will be a discussion under expansion requests. And right now, our present board is asking the Board of Commissioners to have, what were we calling this, a capital expense fund? Reserve fund. Our machines are at the end of their life cycle simply because the technology is starting to be old. So we're looking in the near future and having to replace the system. Now, do we want y'all to fund a new system this year? That would be great, but we think we need to wait a year or two. There are certification requirements. Right now, there's only one system that's certified in the state of North Carolina. We think that'll change over the next 12 months. Also, there is some discussion within the General Assembly about matching grants. So we could maybe get half of this paid for in the next year or so. We'll follow that through the legislature. So right now, we want to make y'all aware of it because it's about a $300,000 purchase. And we're requesting y'all to kind of keep that in mind and set what we're asking for is about $55,000 a year, which is a fifth of that money put aside each year for 5 years. So hopefully that'll fund the whole purchase at the end of 5 years.
These machines will last another 4
I do.
So you're going to be back Monday night, next Monday night?
Yes, I will be back to discuss that.
Tuesday night.
Or whichever
Tuesday-
day it's
Tuesday
scheduled
night.
for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Register of Deeds Office.
So overall, Jennifer's here to answer any specific questions. 7.5% up, but again, the majority of that is based on, a couple things.
Percentages.
When we built the budget last year, we forgot the contract piece for copiers and for her office. We were putting them somewhere else. So we got them back underneath her budget where it needed to be. And then there's also a $10,300 increase there where we didn't have anything last year for automation restoration. That is a pot of money that she actually receives. So there's a revenue, again, what I'm saying is there's a revenue offset for this, because there's a fraction of the amount of money when you record a deed, a piece of that payment goes into an automation fund that the state set up, and that money comes back to the county for Jennifer to do what she needs to do automation-wise to keep things up. So we have to show it on the expenditure side, so when we're anticipating funds coming up to use, then we show it on the expenditure side, but there's also a revenue offset. So, but those are the big two that drove that budget up a little bit.
And those funds are restricted. They have to be used for that purpose.
But that 10,000 is offset by additional revenue coming
Yes.
in.
We draw down those funds.
Any comments or questions while we have the department head here? Do you want to add anything, Jennifer? No. You're good. All right. Okay. Page 47. Now we're down to the maintenance part.
So page 47 is the maintenance buildings and grounds, and this overall budget is down a little bit, and that's simply because of the projects that have been pulled out. You'll see on page 47 where we have proposed the financing on this for 10 years. We went and we looked at a couple things, and we talked pretty heavily about this in the budget, when I presented the budget to you in the budget message, but kind of want to hit that one more time. These are the big projects. The generator at the Seaboard Building for 115, and that's because the generator that is there is not sized large enough to handle that building. I don't know if it ever was. Christina had an electrical engineering group come in and look at it and give us the right size for what we needed, so we estimated out what that would cost. That generator runs the 911 stuff. It also runs our IT servers. Back during the hurricane, during the last hurricane, we came very, very close to that system going down because of a failure of that system to be able to support it all. There's a little over $490,000 for the First Bank remodeling. That's based on the estimate that we got from the engineer. The courthouse improvements, that includes the work in the jail and the work upstairs with the ceiling grid. We've estimated that at about $500,000. You know, we talked a little bit about the communications tower at the presentation. We've estimated about $100,000 for that. We know that we have an estimate from the engineer, from structural engineers, that would be about $90,000 to do that work on the Ponzer Tower. Again, Vic we're approaching that on several fronts. We're continuing to have conversation with the state about it, but it is at the maximum load limit of that tower, and they've said they won't let us on that tower. So a couple of things we're doing, obviously, we're applying for some additional money out of the 911 fund to maybe support that, because it does support the state operations. It supports Hyde County. It will support Beaufort County. So we kind of feel like that ought to be an opportunity for them to help us out on that. We're also looking at it under financing package, and then also trying to have some conversations with some of the folks at the state about is there an opportunity for us to get some kind of reimbursement on that? If we have to pay it all to be able to get on the tower, then is there some opportunity for us to get reimbursed a piece of it as other people get on the tower? And the analogy I kind of make to that is, on the water sewer side, say you have a developer that puts in a long sewer line that connects their subdivision back to the main. A lot of times there'll be a reimbursement agreement that's done with the developer that says, throughout this section of line, if somebody else attaches to that line, they'll pay to help reimburse you for the cost of running the big line. And my assumption, I don't know if that'll work or not. I talked to the folks with the radio folks about it, and they said, we've never seen that work before like that. But the way the radio towers are set up is the last person on the tower who overloads it has to pay to reinforce the entire tower, which really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because then, from that perspective, we just need to wait until somebody else gets on the tower, and then they have to fix it, and then we get back on it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're working multiple angles on that to try to make that work. The courthouse annex, these are the roof replacement projects. What we did on that was we looked at, as you will recall, we had REI Roof Engineering Incorporated come in last year as part of the budget work, come in and do a roof assessment of all of our roofs across the county. They gave us a capital, they evaluated those roofs, and they said, here are the ones that need to be replaced and when they need to be replaced. So they gave us that capital schedule to do that. Then they also gave us a maintenance piece of it that said, you need to spend this much money every year on maintenance just to keep them at a certain level, and then you can replace them at these times. The idea is you get them done right, you do them right the first time, and then you get away from them for 15 or 20 years, instead of having to constantly patch here and there and not look after what you need to do. You might as well do it and do it right. So what we did was we looked at what was projected, or what they had recommended in their capital project, in their capital budget for next year, and then also in 18, because what we anticipated was if we were going to be borrowing money to do long-term capital projects, we want to go ahead and look out a couple of years because we don't want to get in the same position we're in next year. Again, and I'm of the same mind that we like pay-as-you-go. Always have advocated for pay-as-you-go. The problem is you can do pay-as-you-go on these if you want to, and you can kick the can down the road, or we can try to spend some money and get ourselves caught up. We're way far behind, and we feel like we need to catch up. Ultimately, that's for this board to decide what you want to do. But these are the projects. The courthouse annex is a complete roof replacement. The old jail building is a partial roof replacement. The Oakland building is the low slope replacement roof sections. The Seaboard is a complete replacement. And then there is paving and having the engineer, the civil engineers go in and structure and look at how the sloping needs to be and the drainage work that needs to be done on the Tideland building parking lot, and doing whatever needs to be done to get the water to run off the way it's supposed to run off and getting the ditch the way it's supposed to instead of staying out in the middle of the parking lot. Also paving the parking lot right next door at the county attorney's building right there. It's the only thing that's not paved where we park vehicles in the dirt. And then also in this one we talked about, it's replacing the modular unit that's at the landfill. It's in pretty bad shape. And what we would do is propose to replace this under the borrowing package as well. And although this is a piece that is in the Water Fund Enterprise Fund, it's going to be paid out, we would propose paying it out of the borrowing package, but there will be a transfer, and you will see that transfer coming out of the water fund back to the general fund to pay its part of the debt service. Because enterprise funds stand on their own, and they pay their own way, so we're pulling money out of the water fund to come back and pay its portion of its debt service in the general fund borrowing package. So-
To make sure that I understand each one of these buildings, tell me who the departments are in each one of these that we're planning on doing major roof work to, starting with the courthouse annex.
Yes, the courthouse annex houses the water department as well as the district attorney's office.
Okay.
The old jail building houses juvenile probation as well as a unit of the Butler County Sheriff's Office. The Oakland building houses the Sheriff's Office and the 911 Communications Center. The Seaboard building houses the tax collector, tax assessor, environmental help, planning, GIS, and inspections. The parking lot at the Tideland building houses Board of Elections, veterans, adult probation and parole, as well as our lease agreements with numerous mental health contractors, as well as Vidant Mental Health and Court Human Services, which is an inpatient treatment center.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That helps me quite a bit. I had gotten straight on a couple of them, but, you know, people use different terminology. Questions of, it looks like about 3 people can answer them as it relates to maintenance, buildings, and grants. I don't want to cut anybody short because this is to the root of the $3 million loan that we've got in the budget process. So, Commissioner Richardson, this will give you an opportunity to ask additional questions as it relates to.
Well, I don't see that I'm asking specific questions about what we're going to do with the money is not what my problem is. My problem is the county is moving from pay-as-you-go into debt financing for continuing operations, and the taxpayer should be, aware of this big problem, big deal.
My question, I guess, will be to Christina and to Brian as it relates to the study that we had. Are we already at the end of the life on some of these roof repair jobs?
That was what we asked them to look at. We asked them to go in, I mean, they cored roofs, they looked at all of it and said, this is when these need to be replaced, or you will start seeing significant maintenance costs and failures. I mean, they're at the end of their life.
Which we're already seeing significant costs. Jim can speak to numerous issues that we've had at the health department. The Seaboard building where environmental health is housed, the flooring as well as the furniture has been replaced numerous times in there. I can't even begin to tell you how much ceiling grid has been replaced. And that particular roof has an inherent problem. It's not just pinhole leaks throughout. There's only one roof drain that drains that entire roof. And it runs adjacent, you can see it on the corner of Market and 3rd Street. And that office, it floods. What happens is the water's unable to escape through the roof drain, it builds up and backs up on the roof, and then that's when you get the multiple leaks throughout, especially on the north face, the north wall, which is also where our server room is located. So we've experienced numerous failures to date in that building especially. The annex building, the second building, which is also...
Christina?
I'm sorry.
Should have got you to go up there earlier.
Stop.
Yeah.
The annex building has also had numerous failures. Just as an example, the water department is housed on, it's a 2-story building. The water department is housed on the 1st floor, and we have water in our light fixtures. So, the roof is leaking, and then water finds a path and it travels down. So, yeah, we're having roof leaks on the 1st floor of a 2-story building. But again, these are things that the roofs, they've been patched. The REI, actually, we had a contractor come in at the first part of this budget year where they went around and did significant patches. But again, from REI's professional opinion, as someone said, the can's been kicked down the road, and we're continuing to do it, but we're hoping to just make repairs so that we no longer have to go back to it.
Yes.
Sorry.
How old are some of those roofs?
I can't answer that question. I do not have accurate records that I can tell you how old the roofs are.
I've been around there since I was a little boy.
I know what it looks like from underneath looking up at the roof, where it looks like it's smoked and it's been burnt at one time
Yes, sir.
in that building, so
Yes, sir.
the roof has been there a long time,
It's been there a long time.
been there a long time.
The Oakland building, I walked around during the storm event we had just a few weeks ago, kind of an odd occurrence that happened. No one was expecting the amount of rain that came in. And I went up to the 3rd floor of the Oakland building and walked around the perimeter. And, I mean, the number of leaks, it was at least 20 different leaks around the perimeter of the building.
We could always issue umbrellas. Money chalk.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. And it looks like you're finally getting some work done on the old courthouse.
Yes, sir. They are working. Again, we're limited to weekend work, so it's taking us a little bit more time, but they were able to work Saturday as well as Sunday this past weekend, and they're moving right along. So hopefully that will be completed, depending upon the weather. But again, that's, Brian and Anita were speaking about the project funds, and that project is also in a project fund, so you're able to track the funds.
Brian, you got anything else on maintenance and buildings?
No, sir. I mean, it's just, it is terribly important that we look after our assets, and we need to do that.
And the health of our employees.
Well, don't ask me to go on top of the courthouse.
We're having a
I
tour
realize
next
there's
week.
a lot of safety stuff up there.
Actually, that's one of the things that folks will not be allowed up there. That's, once you fix them, you don't want folks walking around on them.
Just you and Christina.
No, not these.
Okay, you want to go to the debt service?
Yes, sir. On page 49, this is your debt service page, and it includes both general fund and your other, or your debt, or your tax supported and your non-tax supported. But just as an update, the Local Government Bond Act, which is General Statute 159, keeps governments from, it doesn't allow governments to incur debt or general fund or general obligation debt, GO, which is supported by the ability to tax. Doesn't allow you to exceed 8% of your appraised property value. You will see that right now you're at 0.38% of your appraised property value. So you got, you're well underneath that requirement. You also have a legal debt margin as of June 30th of 16 of $443 million. You see your ratios, your general fund debt per capita, it's $463, and then your GO debt is $361. The county is a AA3 with Moody's and a AA- with Standard & Poor's. So based upon where we are, our size, our challenges, I doubt you will ever see, well, I can pretty much guarantee you will never see Beaufort County with a AAA rating, but I think you're doing very, very well where you are. There are a lot of folks that are a lot worse shape than we are. And so, you know, the AA3 and the AA- are really good indicators that the finances are strong. And that's done by outside rating agencies. That doesn't have anything to do with anything that we do. So you'll see on page 49, you have the categories of debt. We break those out into school debt, and it shows how much debt you're paying this year that we've shown in the general fund for that. Total of $2.1 million for the debt service in principal, and then $775,000 in interest. But that's broken out in the school debt, the Allied Health building out at the community college, which is a USDA debt, the energy savings contract that you have on several of the buildings that we recently, a couple years ago, refinanced. The 3rd Street building installment purchase, which is the county attorney building next door, that is under an installment purchase contract. So that essentially means that it's not GO. There's no taxing authority. There's no tax supported debt there. It is the asset is pledged. So if you defaulted on that, which you never would, because not only would you not default on it as a county, but the local government commission would never let you default on a payment. So you'll see that there. That's and then if you turn over to page 50, you will see all the different, the general obligation, the general fund outstanding debt, and a description of what GO debt is, and then what installment purchase debt is, which is what we refer to as the 16820 financing, where you pledge the asset, and the bank essentially says, we're going to loan you the money, and if you don't pay it, we're going to take the asset back. But again, you're never going to not pay you're never going to not pay your debt service, because you wouldn't do that as a board, plus the local government commission would never allow you to do that to begin with. They have the authority to come in and take over your books and make sure that you make your payments and do what you have to do. Now, that's only happened a couple of times in the history of North Carolina, but they will do it and have the authority to do that. So you see on page 50, you'll see the bonds, the current bonds that you have for the schools. You'll see the remaining borrowing packages, financing packages you have, where their balances are as of June 30th of 17, and then 18. We run those all the way out to 21, and you'll see those stepping down. On page 51, you'll see the issue date, the final pay date, the description of it, what we're paying fiscal year 6/7, 7/8, 8/9, what the interest rate is, and what type of bond that is, whether it's GO or whether it's installment. Now on this, just want to clear up something in the message, and this is on me because I missed it. When we're looking at our step down this year, we were anticipating about a $450,000 reduction in our school bond piece that comes off, and you'll see that. But when we reladdered, when we refinanced the other stuff, the school bond, 2 years ago, that was done on a level savings piece. So in actuality, instead of that 450 rolling off completely, we only roll off about 50, and that was missed, so I missed that. So what we essentially have is there's about 400. There's about 400 that instead of being completely covered, which we anticipated being completely covered, is not going to be completely covered. So we'll have, although about 50,000 will roll off, we will have to make up next year about 350. Right.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll have about 350, which again, in our conversations, we anticipate if we have the normal growth, we ought to be able to do that. But I want to make sure that's clear to everybody, because originally, our budget is good in this, and it all balances, it's fine. But in my message said we were anticipating not having a hole there because we would be rolling off some debt. We weren't rolling off as much debt as I anticipated we were going to roll off because we missed that one piece. So instead of it being 450, it's about 50, and then you've got that piece left. So does that make sense?
We can show you a picture of that. If you look on page 51 at that table, you can see the first item listed there are the 2006 series GEO bonds, and you can see in the third column where in 18-19 there's zero debt service. So they're completely paid out next year in 17-18. And that's what we were looking at. We said, this is great. They're paid out $450,000. We'll use that money to fill the hole that we have this year because we're appropriating $400,000 or recommending to next year in fund balance. So we're going to use that to fill the hole in the future. Now, if you go down, what we missed, if you go down, let's see, 1, 2, 3 or 4 rows, you'll see the 2015 refunding bonds. And you'll see in the second column where for 17-18, the payment's $131,956. Well, what we missed was that payment going up to the $574,237 the next year in 18-19.
Now, is that payment going to be level at that amount for the next?
It is.
Until
We
it's
went
paid
ahead
out.
and looked out for future years, and it doesn't go up anymore above the 574. What we actually see is about $50,000 to $60,000 falling off every year for the next 10 years, consistently.
Okay. So if we were looking, and I can't remember, if we were looking at a 20-year bond, it's still going to be a 20-year bond. We're not shortening that up with this payment.
Right. So what they did is when we did the refunding in 2015, they levelized the savings, and they also had to pay off some of the bonds that were non-callable. And in order to do that, they had to ladder up
Okay.
the payment in 18-19 to accomplish that.
And so what they did was they looked at it and they said, you got 450 rolling off, we're going to ladder that in so that
Okay.
you can do that. And I was here and Anita wasn't here, so that's on me.
Well, it's on me too, but the good news is we found it now, so it would have been worse if we found it.
It's on me too, because I didn't get it when that happened, but anyway. Question, if we choose to go out, if we had chosen to go out when we spent the money for the radio equipment and done that on a lease, I'm not sure whether it would have qualified or not, but let's just say we did it on a lease, would that show up in our debt and in our structure here?
Yes.
Okay. Thought it would, so.
Yes, just like if you go down to the very bottom, well, the bottom line is a total, but the next to the last item is the installment purchase that we're proposing
3
this
million.
year. Yeah, for the 10 years, for the 3 million.
And a lease would fall in the same table if we had done a lease on the radio
Capital
equipment.
lease
Capital
would,
lease.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Questions? We're not ready for a break yet.
I had a question.
Okay.
On the energy savings equipment installment purchase contracts, how long does that have to run, and what is the revenue piece that goes with that?
The revenue piece is paying the bonds, essentially. Remember how they do that? They say, we're gonna replace all these lights, make them more energy efficient. So instead of your light bill being $20, it's now gonna be 10. So the $10 you saved, you're gonna pretend like you're gonna pay that $20 consistently, and you're gonna use your savings, pay the bonds.
Yeah, so how is that working out?
It's working out fine because they have a guarantee in their contract that says either you make it or we pay the difference. So we haven't gotten into a situation where it's not covering it. And if it did, they would make the difference.
When is the last time we audited it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So, you really don't have a good answer till you audit it.
Well,
We just think we got a good answer because we have to make the demand on them if it's not working. They don't come to us and say, gee, we're sorry you power bill, here's a check. We have to go to them. So that's why my question is, when was the last time that was audited?
it hasn't been audited since I've been here.
Well, we need to audit that, and we need to know where we are with it, whether we're making money or losing money.
I think when we were talking about doing that,
Sorry, I had to take care of something else, another building. Is that the energy audit?
energy with the school.
No.
That's just us.
The Schneider Electric is who we're contracted with, and they actually do an annual report for that. So I'll be happy to provide that to
Yes.
any of the commissioners.
All right.
And that
And I-
last payment's August of '26.
And I think I've seen, I
This
think
year?
we've seen one.
August of 2020.
Oh, of 2020, okay. Yeah, I would like to see, I've never seen the audit.
I'm not sure if you can classify it as an audit, but they do
It's
the
a
annual
report.
report, which gives you the summary of the utility costs and the costs that we pay for the guarantee.
You want to, is there any other questions? If not, we'll move to the non-departmental.
All right, this is on page 53, this is what we call the non-departmental budget. And again, it's stuff that we could theoretically break down and put per department, but it would take more time and more energy than it's worth to do that, because it benefits the entire county. Like the state unemployment insurance is at 50. We're still showing a little bit in there at 25 at the FLSA law impact. This is where you have the employee recognition program. I know last year when we put the budget out, this used to be under the county commissioners or under the manager's budget. We moved it over here to non-departmental. And I think some folks lost it and they said, there's not going to be an appreciation thing there. So.
Employee assistant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Employee luncheon's down there at the bottom. Employee assistance, I apologize. That's the employee assistance, and that is for the assistance program that's available for all county employees that you put in place last year. That was
What does that do?
It allows for employees to meet with either a counselor or a mental health professional or a financial professional that provides counseling services. It also allows us to refer people to that if we have disciplinary issues or those kind of things.
Have we used it?
Yes,
Okay.
we have.
Is it not a 800 number that they can call to get started? Is that?
There is a number that they call, yes, sir, and it's posted in all the break rooms and has been distributed to everybody. But we get a very generic breakdown from that.
I don't want to know who.
Yeah, we don't get specific stuff, but we know that there are certain things, and so that's the EAP, what folks call an EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Insurance and bonds is overall. IT support is down a little bit. Postage is in this category. There's the employee luncheon, and then I have put in here and just call it out for you because hadn't been there before. There's $15,000 put in there to do a telephone system study.
I studied.
The phone systems, I mean, we have multiple phone systems across the county. The one at DSS is at end of life. The one here is probably close to end of life, maybe already at end of life. And what we would like to do is go in and have someone come in and look at that for us, somebody from a technology group, not a salesperson to come in and look at it for us, but somebody who would give us a fair look at it to tell us what makes the most sense for us to replace those systems. Because personally, I think it ought to be done on a countywide basis. We ought to be maximizing the backbone that we already have between departments with internet capability. You know, we got fiber running between some of the buildings. We ought to be maximizing that. And how do we do that in the most efficient and effective manner instead of having old systems that are just getting by, and if we have a major crash on one of them, we're in a lot of trouble because there are a lot of them that just end of life. So that's what that's for.
Questions? Okay, you want to go to transfer to other funds?
Yes, sir. There is, on page 55, you have the transfers for tax reevaluation. This is something that you're required to do by statute every year. You take essentially an eighth. Since you are on every 8-year reevaluation cycle, you're required to essentially set aside funds, the projected amount of funds you think you'll need when you have to do reevaluation again. You're supposed to be setting that money aside, 1/8 of it every year, so that you never get behind. If you were on a 4-year reevaluation, you divide that number by 4, and you'd be putting that away every year. But that's transferring money in for that. Economic development, that's the $80,000, which is for the
That is for the airport grant.
right airport grant, and then also the money for the building.
Committee of 100,
the Committee of 100
$5,000.
partnership. The airport grant, you remember, is the piece that there was an agreement with the city that any growth that occurred beyond a certain baseline at the airport, you would give them that tax money because they de-annexed it, and you would give them, the county gets a baseline, certain amount of money, no matter what, we get that amount of money. And because it's now de-annexed, whatever growth that occurs out there, they get that back to them as an economic development tool. So we put that in there. Don't really know what that is until we run the numbers. But there's also, it's an in and out. We get it on the revenue side because we're collecting it, but we show it out on the expenditure side. So it's an in and out piece. So there are no transfers to capital projects yet, and there are no transfers to special revenue funds. But there is So if the-
There could be a budget amendment during the middle of the year to put money there, depending on what we do with the financing.
that's where that would be.
Well, we started at 5, we've been an hour and a half, so we're going to take a 15-minute break and then come back.
So do you need, let me ask you this real quick before we break. I apologize.
Okay.
Are we okay to cut loose any of the general fund departments because you're moving into human services next, if they're good?
I don't have any problems. I mean, I think it would be informative just to hear some discussion. No, you're excused. You're excused. We're back. Brian?
So we are now moving to human services. Excuse me. And we'll start with Department of Social Services, and I'm going to turn it over to Sonia and Melanie. The Department of Social Services is just overall, they're down about 8.3%, which is pretty significant. I think they did a really good job this year in looking at their budget. There are a lot of interesting ins and outs of the DSS budget and Health Department budget because they're so intertwined with federal and state money. And there's a piece that the county pays, and there's 90% money that comes back from the state. So it is really an art for them and how they deal with those budgets, because you can go in and say, well, I want to cut this, and you can cut something, and you're only saving $1 out of $10 on the county side, and you're doing away with $9 on the federal side. So there's a lot of expertise that goes into managing those budgets over there. So I'm going to let them speak to their budget.
Well, like Brian said, we do have a decrease for next year. The majority of the decrease is due to the anticipation that our child care subsidy program will be administered, the reimbursement piece, through NC Fast. We are scheduled to go into that system, Beaufort County is, in September. And so that's 100% reimbursed funds. So we've budgeted for half, that, after 6 months, we should be fully administering the reimbursement in NC Fast, and it won't be, we won't be claiming reimbursement for that anymore. But that's the majority of the decrease for next year.
So that's showing up under the operating portion, Brian?
Which exact
Correct.
division?
Page 57 is where I'm looking at. Okay. Part of it. Anything else you want to touch on? Is there?
Is anything else you want to put on?
No, I think you've heard a lot about the issues around departments of social services. With DHHS, we continue to have issues statewide with the NC Fast system. We've talked a lot, but I think with Beaufort County, what you will see with our performance indicators is that we consistently are performing above the state standard. And I think a lot of that has to do with the investments that the county has made with our IT. So I think that those are the issues that you'll continue to see in the state, but right now I think we're in a good place.
Good.
Questions?
I don't have any questions.
You're to be commended.
So Health Department on page 79, and of course Jim's here, and they have kind of that same kind of amount running back and forth. You'll see on page 79 where local funding, which is county funding for the Health Department, only comprises 43% of that budget. So the majority of that budget comes from state and federal sources or billable services. And again, it is an expertise in dealing with those different types of funding that Jim and his staff deal with, so.
Right. So the total budget is $3,944,122, and that looks like it's up quite a bit from last year. As a matter of fact, it's up $230,604, but I want to make sure that I explain that that money is the expansion budget with the jail health and healthy living clinic services. So out of the county dollars that are going towards that is an increase of $173,442, and $141,434 of that, so all but $30,000 is money that was under the Sheriff's Department last year, which will be moving to ours. So even though it looks like we're going up $173,000, $140,000 of that is actually coming from the Sheriff's Department, which leaves me about $30,000 above what we were looking at last year. And out of that $30,000, most of that's health insurance and the retirement program that contributed to that.
Comments, questions? I think you've already done a good job prior to it talking about the expansion, so. Thank you very much.
Page 101 is Veteran Services. They're up 2.2%, and again, this is a one-person department, and all of that is essentially in health insurance and retirement. It's only slightly up just a little bit, but it's 2.2%, so it looks like a lot, but it's not. And I think the only thing that we added in Karen's budget was under professional development. We bumped her professional development up a little bit because she now holds a certification through the state for veteran services, and she's got to be able to maintain that, which means she needs to go to a class to get some Con Ed. Otherwise, that's about as flat a budget as you can get, although it shows a 2.2% increase.
Okay, you want to go to 103?
Page 103 is the mental health piece and transportation. Down at the bottom, you'll see what makes this up. Beaufort Area Transit, we are recommending that you go from 88,750 to 141,250, and that is a programmed increase of 52.5, which is the start of a 2-year proposed increase for them in an effort to provide full funding for that service, because right now they are subsidizing that through BCDC, and they're not able. We've had some meetings with them. They came and did a presentation to y'all and talked about that. So our discussions with them were that if we could get them, because otherwise they said, we're not going to be able to continue to provide this service. And if they were not providing that service, you would either have to decide that you didn't want to provide that service at all, or you would have to go find somebody else. And my anticipation would be that it would cost you a lot more than what you're paying now, simply because of the infrastructure that's already in place. But
Well, while you're on that, I'd like a word on that. This is a program that the county's not required to put one dime in. I've been fighting this for 20 years now. Y'all keep putting money into it because the state started this program was seed money to nurture local transport. And what it's happened in Beaufort County has happened in a lot of other counties. It's morphed into a welfare system. And with them hauling people to social services, hauling people to medical care, hauling people to this, hauling people for that, and nobody pays anything because social services usually pays them some money each year to keep this thing going. And the people that ride pay very little. They pretend that they have a public service part of this and that you can get them to make a haul for you. They'll pick you up or do this. But in most cases, they charge people very, very, very little money. They are supposed to get all of the money that they need to balance their budget from charging the users of the system. It is not up to people who are already working, bought a car of their own, paying their own transportation, and the county is subsidizing this as a welfare deal. And we should not be doing this. I've talked to people with the state that run this, and they tell me the same thing that I have just told you. They never intended for this thing to become what it is today. It's a welfare deal, and the people that use it should be the people that are paying for it, not people that are out working for a living paying all of this subsidy money to these people, with them threatening to withdraw the service if we don't keep funding them. From my standpoint, I see plenty of taxis running around town. We can stop funding this, or we can find somebody else to run it. But the taxpayers are being taken advantage of, and putting another $50,000 in this thing, improving their budget by $50,000 is a ripoff on the taxpayer.
Any other comments?
Do we have anybody here to speak to that?
All right.
no, they'll be here.
During the outside agency.
They'll be here during outside agencies to speak.
So we'll get clarification, because I don't remember a lot of that, recalling.
It's not a question of clarification. What I just told you is what the law is, what the truth is, and the way the thing's supposed to work. Chris is going to come in here and tell you something different, and he's not being truthful. Yes, I said that in public.
You say anything you want, not that I recall.
Well, during our planning, we did have some good conversation. I guess the thing that concerns me is when, and I'm not sure that I've got this straight, maybe Chris or somebody can clarify it, is it we're having some competition as it relates to some of the services that they historically have done?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessary competition. I think there's some funding streams, and Sonia.
Some reimbursements that.
There was some, if I mess this up, and I probably will, correct me, but there was, related to some of the DSS clients, they were using BATS transportation, but because of the way it was structured, and they were using shared rides, which shared rides are more economical than you just putting one person in a vehicle. They're using shared rides, but the state or the feds didn't recognize that as a correct reimbursable, so they wouldn't reimburse us for it. So we had to go back and start using taxis, which is a higher cost than shared rides. Right? She can address that.
What, the portion that deals with Department of Social Services is what's known as non-emergency medical transportation, and that is a mandated service. If you receive Medicaid, we have to provide transportation to those Medicaid reimbursable services, and we have to use the least expensive method of transportation. And when BATS went to the shared ride, it was more expensive than the taxis. So a lot of the rides now are actually being provided by taxi service. The problem, and we do use BATS because some of our clients have to have a lift van, and they do have that. They're able to provide that service. But a lot of the folks are on that receive the service are on life-sustaining services like dialysis. But that is a mandated service. So, and right now, that does come through Department of Social Services. We determine, we say that they receive Medicaid, and then we decide if the trips are appropriate, and we pay the bills. So, but those are the ones that pertains to our agency.
Is there anything that would keep us from doing some kind of a joint venture with Hyde County to take care of some of the people that live in the Belhaven or Pantega area? We've got, they're stopping in Belhaven because I see them most mornings, and we have a unit down there. And some mornings, there's only one person in the Hyde County, headed to Washington or Greenville, wherever they're taking them. Have we ever looked at?
There's nothing to preclude us from with signing them up as a vendor for us. We could do that. I mean, if they're interested. In fact, we're in the process now. We're having to renegotiate the contracts for the new fiscal year. And if they're qualified in Hyde County, most likely they'll meet it's the same mandates for Beaufort County.
Would Martin County share the same kind of a transportation, bringing people to Washington to the medical?
I mean, they have a transportation system as well.
I think the DSS actually runs their transportation service in Washington and Martin County. I mean, it's under their umbrella, from what I understand.
I think you can have some of those good conversations with Chris when he's here.
Okay.
I don't want to get too deep into his because I don't.
All right. Any other questions on the health and transportation?
But again, on all this, you'll see the Trillium Health, that's a contract we have with Trillium to provide services, the alcohol treatment, which comes off the bottle tax, and then the passages piece. And that's a state, the passages is a state grant. It flows through us.
Okay. Community service?
Crawford Extension is the next, is the first one under community services. They're actually, the budget shows down about 15%, 14.9%. And of course, if you take out, you got to remember last year, again, it's where we have to show money flowing through. There's $60,000 that was in their budget last year that's not in their budget this year because we bought 2 vans. And remember, Potash bought one of those vans, so we show, and you bought one of them. So on their budget, on the expenditure side, we show a $60,000 expenditure last year to buy those 2 vans. On the revenue side, you show a $30,000 coming in from Potash last year. So that's one of the big changes you'll see in this budget going down. If you take that out, they're actually up slightly. But Rod can answer any of those questions that you may have particularly. I know they've got they're still sharing a position. So they've got a lot of good things going on. If you have any questions for him.
I don't know about the rest of them, but I've got one question. I've not looked in the expansion part. there was some discussion about the possibility of getting maybe a trailer, enclosed trailer, that could be used along with the van.
To pull, for Aaron to be able to move all these animals around for the livestock show, I
Yes.
believe it was. And we never really pursued that.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I think we have that covered with the equipment we've already got.
Okay.
I think we're going to be able to make that work with the trailer we have already.
Any other questions of Rod? Thank you.
So on page 109 is soil and water conservation. They're down 2.4%. Ian is here to answer any particular questions you may have. I think they've got a fair amount of stuff going on right now, and we'll have a fair amount of stuff going on in the new year from grants from snagging and dragging. Thank goodness there's some money being put out there. Hopefully there'll be more money being put out there. And if it comes, it'll just be an in and an out, so won't be county dollars related to it. So, if you have any questions for her.
And that will actually be $224,997.
Ann?
Yes, sir?
I'm doing this, Randy's giving me the sign back there. Would you repeat that dollar amount again?
$224,997. And that will be the work on some vegetative debris removal from 4 of our drainage districts.
Apparently you're getting some of the money that DOT should have because they're letting things lay that needs to be snagged and dragged too.
That's good.
On the side, but any questions?
Nope. Snag and drag, snag on.
Thank you very much.
Snag on.
Youth services, which is on page 113. This is the JCPC program. I think we talked a little bit about y'all know about the JCPC program. That was, y'all recently approved the match. It's a 10% match from state funding. The Boys and Girls Club appropriation is where this falls under in Pamlico Pals. The only difference, this shows it's down 2.3%. The reason it's down 2.3% is last year you gave the Boys and Girls Club $5,000 additional dollars in one-time funding. It was, you historically have given them $40,000. Last year, you gave them an additional $5,000 and marked it as one-time funding. So we dropped them back to 40. So that's where you see, everything else is the same. That's where you see the decrease of 2-some%. So, and of course, JCPC, we're showing that number right now as the grant that they anticipate receiving from the state. Throughout the year, especially toward the end of the year, you'll see JCPC sometimes ramp up and get a little extra money that hasn't been spent, so they'll divvy that out through the counties and 10% match, and most of the time they're able to cover that. So, but you may see that change a little bit throughout the year.
Does that include the last budget amendment we did, or we took action last month?
You took action to approve their match, and that's the match. Well, that's not the match. The match is 10%. So again, that's one of those where you show the total expenditure because the money's flowing through the county. So $167,628 is the total amount. It includes the state allocation and your 10% match.
Okay.
We show it on our expenditure side. It goes to the JCPC Council. They distribute those funds to the agencies that are doing that work. They monitor it. They keep up with it. They report back to us and file all the paperwork with the state. And then we show it. We show the revenue from the state coming in less your 10% local match coming in on the revenue side.
But on the expense side, this number here represents the county's portion too.
Yes, sir. That represents the entire amount. It represents the entire amount.
The state and county share.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because we have to show everything on the expenditure side.
Everybody good? All right. Where do we go next?
We are under outside agencies, and again, we will have those folks. I guess on the outside agencies, we showed this as a continuation budget piece, and then showed any outside agencies with the expansions that they would come and speak to y'all about. So it is the same, essentially as where we were at actually it's a little less. Oh, that's right, where we pulled out the dues. There were a couple of those we pulled the dues out. You'll see like, what was it, Chamber of Commerce is, we show those being zeros now. Like the Washington Chamber of Commerce was 1,500. We don't show that because we moved that to the Board of Commissioners, the Bellhaven Chamber. They actually requested additional money, so we took out the piece that, they requested 10. We took the 1,000 that is the membership, put it under the county commissioners, and then the remaining 9,000 is in a surface expansion. So, but this essentially maintains all of them, unless there were ones that had one-time funding, like, there was a couple in here that had one-time funding. Chalkawinity.
I believe.
Yep, Chalkawinity Recreation, you gave them $10,000 last year, and that was an additional, whatever difference is between $7,200. So we held everybody back to what their original continuation was.
Why isn't Boys and Girls Club and Pamlico Pals, why aren't they an outside agency?
Well, they've historically been shown under youth services, so that's where we show them over here on page 113, under youth services. They are essentially an outside agency, but they deal specifically with youth services. And so.
Yeah, but so do all these other things. If you go to outside agencies,
Yeah.
you're picking at nits over there too.
Yeah, so, I mean, historically, that's where it's been, and kind of left it, so.
Here again, I've not been all the way back to the outside agencies. Is Bath's Library back there in the expansion part?
The Bass Library piece, yes, sir.
It is, okay.
The historic piece.
No. The Bath Library was asking for some money. Or at least, I got an email that said that they were asking for money, and
I don't remember getting one from them.
So we didn't receive an application, is what you're saying?
We got one from the Historic Bath Foundation.
No, this is the Bath Library.
But I'm not showing in our outside agencies that we received anything from.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a name that I can reach out to someone and make sure we just didn't miss something?
I think it was from Peterson. I guess a question, because I don't fully understand how this BHM library budget rolls up with some of the individual ones, but the question I get asked is, Bellhaven gets 1,000, why does another library don't get 1,000? And you don't have to answer that tonight, but that's going to be asked when we do the expansion part. I think Bellhaven's library is the only one on here outside of the Bryan Library and the BHM.
You're right.
It's traditionally what they've always gotten.
I don't know. That's something that the board's always funded historically.
It's sort of like the recreational stuff. That dates back to President Johnson, when we were doing it back then.
Oh, Nixon.
Nixon.
Yeah.
So,
I couldn't remember your comment when it was brought up.
It was Nixon that started it.
Okay.
but the BHM piece, you are a member of BHM and you provide money to them, and then their board deals with. Now, the money that you provide stays in Beaufort County except for a little piece that goes to for administration. So.
Like I say, I don't understand that piece of it, but there's questions to come. Any other comments? All right.
Your next one is on page 117, economic development. That budget is flat. It's actually a little less than the original budget. The original budget was 281. I gotta say that for Martin's benefit, because he actually wanted to, so the difference in last year's budget and this year's budget is $72. And
Great work, Martin.
Martin wanted me to give him that $72 back. He said to me, "You said flat." I said, no. So he is, Yeah, I mean, it does, any questions you have on that?
Nah.
I don't think there's any question. If you'll come to Belhaven, I'll buy you lunch, because you did a good job. Okay. Thank you. Planning.
The planning department is down 2%. And, let's see, I don't remember exactly where that change was. Oh, we pulled out.
We pulled out.
Right. The airport, for some reason, the airport grant piece was, for some reason, under there previously. Don't know how it got under there, but it had historically been there. We moved it out, because it just didn't make sense being in planning.
Any questions of Martin or, no, I'm sorry,
Planning.
Are we in planning?
planning?
No question.
Well, he's not here, is he? Okay. Any questions?
How are we doing this road sign stuff?
Right now, our guys are doing it. We're having some conversations about whether we can do that in a manner with the volunteer fire departments. To where we-
Who are our guys?
Our inspectors. They're doing that on Fridays.
Well, they really don't have time.
Well, and that's the piece that we're running into is with the economy picking back up, they're spending more time doing inspections, and historically what they've done, I guess ever since they started the program, was they would do that on Fridays. They take Friday afternoon and put signs up.
That was fine when the economy was slow and there wasn't anything to do, but I'm getting complaints about signs not being up, and I'm seeing as I go around the county, a lot of signs have been down for a long time.
And that is one of the things that we're having conversations about. I think we talked to the board a little bit about it, was seeing if we could get it, work it out with the local fire departments to where, because they know those roads, they know what needs to be up, what's not. So we're working on it. And of course, that money, it's not like we need new money for that. That money's in this budget, so if we're able to work that out, which we think we will, we'll use money out of this budget, so it won't be new money needed.
Okay, we've done the school. Is public safety next?
No, sir. Actually, and I don't see Mark, so, but the community college would be the last piece of education. We're going through education tonight, and the last piece of that would be the community college. So essentially,
Nope.
okay, so on page 125 is the community college. We gave them what they asked for in their current expense. And we looked at what they asked for in their capital. And based on the big cut they got last year, we had anticipated actually more of a capital request than we got. And essentially felt that was an appropriate capital request. Now, we also went back in and looked in our proposed borrowing package, did it make sense for any of those projects to be able to be pulled under the 10-year financing? And we found some of those. So what we were proposing was $165,000 of that be cash capital financed, and then $118,000 of it be direct cash capital. And you'll see that. And again, theirs is kind of the way the school system was as well. Excuse me. Y'all gave them some budget flexibility. So I think they moved some money from capital to continuing or current expense. They moved from capital to current expense last year. But our numbers are based on what we originally started with. So you'll see some differences in theirs compared to ours.
Did the college realize they were on the agenda tonight?
They were. I had that conversation with Dr. Tansey, and she was actually going to get Mark to come, so I don't know maybe if they
Okay.
missed that, but we'll follow back up with them and see if we can't get them here before we're done. So.
Comments, questions?
Are you going to try and get him here again?
Yes, we'll try, I'm sure they'll be here. We're happy to talk about any additional thing you had on your schedule.
Is there anything else scheduled for
Not
tonight?
anything scheduled for tonight. We start with public safety and the two enterprise funds tomorrow. But we're happy to go back over anything you got or talk anymore. We're here to answer any questions.
I'm not asking for a motion now because this is a recess. All right. We're going to recess until tomorrow night at 5 o'clock.
I'll be late. I got another